It's just a fungus, therefore. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm not presenting any of my own work here. This really is just a report back and work done by CABI for us. There are two rust fungi on Lantana. There is both the Prospodium tuberculatum and then there's Puccinia lantanae. This comes from work that CABI did for Australia. Australia in the past had Prospodium tested and released there. The reason why they went for Prospodium first was twofold. Firstly, it's only been recorded on Lantana and nothing else, whereas Puccinia lantanae has been recorded on numerous plant species, including the species on both Verbenaceae and Lantanae. Secondly, Prospodium occurs within the subtropical regions of Brazil, whereas Puccinia lantanae on the more tropical regions. So in other words, it was assumed that Prospodium would be more suitable for release in Australia. They did the testing, they released it. It's there, it's working, but it is restricted to only two of the more common forms in and around Brisbane. It's not spreading onto other forms, therefore it's very limited impact. So they then got CABI to start testing Puccinia to see whether it could be host specific, because there were some indications from the field that although the species is recorded from a very broad range of hosts, that there could well be host-specific physiological races within the species. So Australia paid for CABI. CABI started testing. I heard about this and I thought, well, it's a brilliant opportunity. We pay a little bit of money, and it really wasn't much money. This is a very cheap exercise. CABI has tested some plants for us in addition to all the plants that they tested for Australia. So this is the report back, what you've got. One of the things to notice is that the host spec testing was done with a very selected isolate. It comes from Peru, and it is more damaging than the typical Puccinia lantanae because it infects the stems, veins, etc. So in other words, it is more damaging to the plant, more sustained damage than just some lesions on the leaves, which will cause a bit of early defoliation. The work was done by Sarah Thomas. I'm only a male, I can't do two things at once, you see. With Carol Ellison as well. So just quickly to do what they found. They inoculated plants, standard inoculation, very high levels of inoculum used, as is typical of host spec testing with pathogens. They used this rating scale, 0 being absolutely nothing seen on the plants, no symptoms, nothing, no cause of anything. A 1 would be that there's fluorosis, in other words, a yellowing, or necrosis, in other words, little dead patches. That would indicate that the pathogen has tried to penetrate, and then there's an active defense mechanism that's kicked in to stop it from being, to stop it in its tracks. Then just very weakly susceptible, in other words, you get very small restricted lesions. A 3 would be slightly bigger, and your 4 would be those normal big lesions as I showed you before. So the very first thing they did was they tested a whole range of Lantana biotypes. Most of these are from Australia, but they included ones from various regions of the world, including the native range, a couple of other. And this is the range that they found. So you see, it's impossible. You just can't multitask us, guys. You're useless. Okay, so see, it's side and middle. I mean, it's just too beyond us. So, as you can see, within Lantana of the various biotypes, around about 40% of them were highly susceptible, a range of others. One of the things that they did was they then looked at these and with a lower inoculum levels to see what would happen. And these ones where there was chlorosis and a little bit, they actually then didn't show any symptoms, there was nothing. In other words, it's only the very high inoculum loads that enabled some infection to happen. South African forms that were included, there were 6 different ones, 2 of which were highly susceptible. So it's about a third. So in other words, this rust fungus would attack at least a number of our forms. You don't have to worry about that. These are the plants that they tested for Australia. I've simply marked a few in green. These are South African plants, Lantana rugosa, a couple of our Lipias. Of all of these plants, those that I've got in red are the only ones that showed any symptoms. And as you can see, 2 of them, there was chlorosis necrosis. In other words, there was some attempt at penetration, but the host simply zapped that. So those plants are immune. These 3, so that's 2 different varieties of one plant and then phyla. There was a little bit of sporulation. Again, this is at the usual high inoculum doses using host spec testing. They tried lower, they ran a test with different levels of inoculum, and again, as soon as the amount of inoculum was reduced, there was absolutely no symptoms at all. In other words, the specific isolate that they're testing for all these plants for Australia is completely host specific, only attacking Lantana, Camara, and nothing else. And they tested plants within the Verbenaceae, Lamiaceae, and then a number of related families as well. So in total, they tested 16 different species of Verbenaceae for the Aussies and 27 from other families. For South Africans, I've kept the same colour scheme, so the ones in green were tested for the Australians, and they also did a double batch for us. And then a couple of other plants. As you can see, again, most of them, there was absolutely no symptoms whatsoever. Interestingly, Lantana rugosa, for the Australians, there was no symptom at all, whereas with us, they got a little bit of chlorosis. But again, that simply indicates that the plant actively resisted. It is immune. It's not a host. Again, Phylonodiflora for the Australians didn't show anything, whereas in the test with us, it came up. Phylocanescence again, and then another Privia. Phyla and Privia, of course, are aliens. They're not native to South Africa at all. So in total, there are 49 different species that have been tested, none of which are actually susceptible to the isolate that has been tested. And we can therefore conclude that this is a highly host-specific isolate, and I would like to apply for permission to release in the future. Thank you. I was instructed not to waffle, and I think I managed to do that.
Thanks very much, Alan. Yeah, it's very nice to have an agent that is host specific like this. Makes life very, very straightforward. Does anyone have any questions for Alan? No.
Late afternoon.
Must be, yeah. Already. There we go.
Sorry, excuse my naivety. How readily do fungi change or evolve? So could this biotype change in a couple of generations?
The risk of it changing is less than insects changing. The interaction is much, much closer between the plant and the fungus than it is for, because it's very, very close on the molecular level, rather than just a great big jumping jaws level.
And we're certain to have only that biotype that will come in.
Yeah, we're only looking at that, and the CABI selected it for Australia because it is more damaging than the normal or any other isolates that they looked at. So it's just that one that we're looking to bring in. Hildegard.
Eleanor, how much value would it be to control only 2 of the growth forms of lantana? We have, I don't know, what number? Are they the 2 main ones?
That was 2 of the 6 that we supplied them. It was quite a long time ago that we supplied, so I'm not sure whether those were main ones. It was simply showing that a number of our forms are susceptible. How many of all of our forms are susceptible, we don't know yet, because we haven't tested them, obviously. But if a third of all of our forms are susceptible, possibly nearly half if we go with the 40% of the Australian, etc., it suggests that we'll get, it's a lot more than just 2 in the end.
Well, I suppose I can do it from here. Right. In my area of responsibility, I've released 7 different agents on lantana, and they don't survive there because our winters are too dry and too cold. But these aren't insects. In your opinion, do you think they'd stand a better chance of surviving up there?
At the dry northwest, I don't know. I haven't worked with this fungus, so I can't get a gut feeling. I suppose that because it is more associated with tropical climates, it probably would require more humid, rather than out in the dry northwest. I don't know.
You can try it anyway.
But well, this is the thing, as you know, with lantana, we have to hoy everything against it in the hope that something works. So it's the only way to go with lantana. Philip.
Is there, just in a follow-up to Hildegard's question, would there be other biotypes of fungus that would have her specificity on some of the other varieties of lantana?
Different isolates would have different host ranges within lantana biotypes, yes.
And are there plans to test those? Or
no. We're just piggybacking on the Australians.
So when the Australians test the next one, we'll piggyback again?
Yeah. The cost of this is equivalent to about 3 months' salary plus cost of a researcher. It's very cheap. So it's worthwhile doing.
Well, is it sensible for us to test the next one?
If it works. If one works, then there's nothing wrong with going out and getting more. Let's see if this one works.
Okay. Thanks very much, Helen.